on day one of other people's houses, the ultimate leverage. So just a show of virtual hands in the chat. Has anyone actually done any used other people's houses to make money in real estate? Has anyone done any, whether it be lease options or agreements for sale where you're leasing the property, or maybe subject twos where you're leasing the property? There's a few different strategies where you don't actually have to purchase the home, but you can use them to make money. So just type in the chat if anyone here has already done some of those. Just let me know. But for the next 2 days, we're going to focus on how to use other people's houses to make money in real estate, which is really truly, in my opinion, the only no money down strategy in real estate. We all know that you can use other people's money to buy property, and it's not your money, but typically real estate is done with somebody's money, except in these circumstances where you're using other people's houses. I believe this is one of the only truly no money down scenarios. No money down meaning none of anybody's money down to make money in real estate. Ali says never heard of OPH. Angela has indicated that she's not done it. So what we're going to spend the next 2 days on is how you actually go about doing this. And it can be done in most Western countries. You have the ability to do this, whether it be in Canada or the United States or Australia, United Kingdom. I've even helped an investor in the Philippines set up and structure this for them. I will get into the differences a little bit, I think, in tomorrow, the differences between the different countries. All right. So I just want to officially welcome everybody to the class. Hopefully everybody's happy to be here. I know I'm happy to be here, providing you with this information and just sharing this particular strategy, the OPH strategy. And one thing I know is it doesn't matter how many times you learn something or how many times you've gone through the same training, you can always learn something new. So if you've gone through training similar to this before, like whether it be lease option training or something like that, don't worry, you can always learn something new, regardless of how many times you actually go through a specific training. So like I said, the ones that indicated they've never even tried doing real estate with other people's houses, but if you've ever tried it and failed getting properties with no money, without JV partners, without other people's money, don't worry, because that's the whole focus of this weekend. If you've ever been concerned in the past that you actually need money to do real estate, whether it be yours or somebody else's, you see a lot of information, especially over the last few years, about other people's money. There's a lot of courses popping up about, how to attract other people's money, how to get joint venture partners, how to raise capital. Don't worry, you can go through this, use this strategy, and you don't have to do any of that. So other investors and realtors, a lot of them want you to think that the only way to get into real estate investing is to actually buy a property. Obviously, realtors have a vested interest in you buying properties, and a lot of other investors say, hey, you got to buy a property, you got to have some ownership in the property, whether it be using your money or somebody else's. But to do real estate investing, you actually need to buy property, and that's just not true. And maybe if you've ever thought that as an investor, the investors in your area are all competing for the same, realtor listings or deals, you're probably right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to get the homeowner to contact you directly. So you're not out there fighting with, or not fighting, maybe the wrong terminology, but hustling, going after the same deals as every other investor out there. When something comes up on the market, or it's a pocket listing with a realtor, chances are they have numerous amounts of investors that they're working with, that they're sending the deal to, and you tend to always be competing. So what sets you apart is having the homeowner contact you directly before they actually start dealing with other people, start dealing with the realtor. So going directly to the homeowner, or having the homeowner come directly to you. So we'll get into how you actually make that happen. So I'm here. So this weekend, I'm going to show you how you can actually get into real estate investing, regardless of your exit strategy. I want to be crystal clear. There's a number of different exit strategies. Once you have the property, you can do whatever you want with the property. And I'm going to show you several of those exit strategies today, how you would actually execute those exit strategies, and the one that's going to get you the biggest return on your investment without using any money, without actually having to buy the property or having owners, and by having owners come directly to you wanting your help. See, most owners, they have a problem, and you're offering a solution that specifically addresses their problem, and you're going to show them how you can actually help them. So my goal for this training is to help at least one person get their freedom using this strategy. Now, a lot of you may be asking, well, why only one person, John? So my question to you is, are you going to be the one person? And if so, are you any more or less special than anyone else in the group? That's really what it boils down to. Are you going to be the one person? And then what sets you apart from everybody else in the group? So that means typically it means if you can do it, then anybody else in the group can do it as well. Then I should be your big hope, honestly. You should look at me and go, man, if that guy can do this, then I know I can. Seriously, if that guy's out there doing this, then anybody can. And one thing, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of you have gone to other courses, and don't you just love those trainers that are up there in the front of the room for, 2 to 3 days, and they tell you how great they are, and they spend the whole 2 or 3 days just talking about themselves and how great they are. And then, you're nodding off during the course, and you wake up and you're just looking at them. It's like, oh yeah, they're still talking about themselves. Okay. Doesn't that just drive you insane? Well, you can rest assured that's definitely not going to happen here. Because you go to those trainings and people look at them in awe and think, wow, that guy's really special. I could never do that. Well, you're not going to get that here. And if after 2 days you leave here and think that you could never do that, then I failed you. But I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. Okay. My feeling is if the person standing in front of the room teaching you isn't the biggest failure in the room, then they don't actually deserve to stand in front of you. They don't actually deserve to be teaching you their information. It's not about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. That's a quote that became famous from the Rocky Balboa movie. So you got to be willing to take the hits. You can't blame everybody else because you aren't where you want to be. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. So again, from the movie, I just thought it was a great quote. Like I said, I've had more homeowners say no to me in a month than most investors get in a year. That's because I'm out there actively talking to homeowners who have expressed interest and actually came to me looking for a solution. And the reason they say no is I just didn't present it well enough to them. That was the biggest reason why they said no. Like I said, if I can do this, then all of you can, because I am an introvert. I am not a salesperson. I am not a trained negotiator. But if I can go out and do deals every month, then I know all of you can do the same thing. Especially those who have a little bit more extroverted, a little bit more sales ability, a little bit more presentation skills. And one thing a lot of you don't know is I've actually lost 60 to 70% of the deals I've put together and closed. I've actually lost because I didn't protect myself from the partners I ended up getting in business with. So I always protect myself when it comes to the actual deal. The way I structure the deal, I protect myself from liability, but I failed in protecting myself from people that I got involved in business with in real estate over the years. So I ended up losing 60 to 70% of the deals that I've actually put together, and then I talk about during this training. So like I said, I should be your big hope if I'm still out there doing it. getting knocked down and getting back up and still moving forward. But what I'm going to, but from that, you'll gain a lot of information, a lot of knowledge on what to do and what not to do. So like I said, if I'm not the biggest screw up in the room, then somebody else needs to be up here teaching this course, honestly. So here's the deal. In order to succeed, you need to step outside of your comfort zone. And I do that on a regular basis and take risks. Like I said, I'm a proud introvert. Don't cold call, don't cold knock. So I go, but I have developed a solution or a system or a model that brings people to me that have a problem, and then they're looking for a solution. All right, so another thing is you don't learn in the good times, you always learn in the bad times. And you don't learn from doing things right. You really learn from all of your screw ups, provided you take a look at what happened and try to make it a little bit better. Now, wouldn't you rather learn from someone who's been through a lot of ups and downs and get back up? Like I said, every time I get back up, I'm a little bit smarter, a little bit wiser as to what to do next. So not stepping out of your comfort zone is the biggest risk you can take. So in going through this, hopefully most of you won't repeat any of the failures I've had to endure, nor do some of the things that I've done. And we'll get into those a little bit further and do the training. It's why I have coaches. I have coaches in real estate, I have coaches in business, and I have coaches in marketing, because they have all gone through a lot of the struggles that I potentially could go through. And with their guidance, I can avoid a lot of the pitfalls. However, in the business, I didn't take that, getting involved in partners, I didn't end up protecting myself. And I don't blame anybody else other than myself. I take full responsibility for all my actions. So I don't know any successful people who don't have at least one or more coaches or mentors in their life. It's through my coaches' trials, failures, persistence, that has propelled them forward in a position to teach others to do it successfully. So hopefully in my pitfalls and failures and persistence, I'm going to help you through this weekend to be able to go out and actually do this business. Like most success comes from countless failures. Take, for example, Einstein and the light bulb. What is it, 10,000 times he didn't succeed, and then that one time he did. Okay. So I truly want to make sure that I help those who want to get started in real estate, whether you're just getting started or maybe those who are already doing real estate, but they want to grow their portfolio investment properties without having to need a large sum of cash or going out and getting joint venture partners or raising capital or other people's money to buy the property. So that's what I want to do this weekend, and provide a solution and model that will work for everyone. So even people like me, like I built this model specifically for myself because of my shortcomings, because of just the way that I am naturally, the introvertedness, the not being able to sell or present very well initially, and having to learn some of those skills. So I built a system that sort of aids me in doing that. Now, the only way for you to get into real estate investing and make money using other people's houses for say 2 or 3 or 5 years is actually control those properties using something that it's called a lease option. And the only way to do that consistently and successfully is by using the OPH model. So here's a schedule for today. Maybe a little bit different than the PDF that you downloaded, because I did change something from that I was going to talk about tomorrow, and I put it on to today. So we'll get into why and how I created the OPH model. We're going to get into the actual lease option strategy itself, the opportunity. We're going to dig into the money. Where's the money made? Do a few different examples, walk through some examples. This will be some class participation to make sure that you know how to actually determine how much profit you can make on various situations. And we'll get into the model itself and some of the unusual strategies. I think the unusual strategies comes after money, because we're still doing examples of how you actually make money in various situations. So we'll be running through numerous examples today on how you actually make money using this strategy. And then tomorrow, we're going to get into the three core components of the OPH model, that's being the homeowner attraction. We'll get into a little bit more detail there about marketing. We'll actually create some ads tomorrow, create an ad tomorrow. There's three different formats that I show you, but we'll actually go through one of them. We'll actually create an ad together. We'll get into presenting and negotiating. So I'll show you the two different methods that I've used in the past. One, how I was taught to do this, and the way that I was doing it in the first few years, and then what I developed that into and how I do it today is a little bit different. And then we'll get into more detail about the setup and the structure of how do you actually put all this together legally, and what agreements do you need to have in place, and how does it look? And all of that will translate or be just slightly different depending upon where you live in the world. And with everybody, I mentioned, I'll mention it several times, to seek legal advice, because what I'm going to talk about is my experience and where I live, but I even tell people who live in the same country as I do, but a different province, to seek your own legal advice. But this is the structure. You can take the structure, take these agreements, and go talk to your local lawyer, and they should be able to, from that information, advise you as to how you would set it up in your jurisdiction to make sure it's done ethically, abiding by all the laws of any property acts or resident tenancy acts or things like that. So we'll get into the setup and the structure and a little bit about getting started. Okay, so that's going to be the syllabus for the schedule for the next 2 days. I think something just popped up here. So let me. Oh, someone's asked, how long is each day? I'm probably looking at, say, 4 to 5 hours for each day. 4 to 5 hours today, 4 to 5 hours tomorrow. We'll see how it goes, how quickly we get through it. We'll take a break, probably around in 2 hours or so. The midway point, we'll take, say, a half-hour break. It'll be my lunch. It'll be lunchtime where I am. So we'll take a short break. I'll grab something to eat, and then we'll get back at it. So I'm saying probably somewhere between 4 to 5 hours each day. So who am I? As a lot of you, I've never actually met before. You may not know much about me. I'm a very proud introvert. I don't consider myself a salesperson or a negotiator. I actually invest in businesses, real estate, plus I've consulted with multi-million-dollar companies to help them grow their businesses. And one thing I've done is figure out a way to attract, present, negotiate, and set up and structure homes for homeowners for only $100 down, and have those homes available to me for between 1 to 5 years as investment properties to actually make money. So money that I can use to reinvest in other education, other properties, or travel, become financially free. So I've invested the majority of my money. I've reinvested in my education and into a lot of it into travel. So let's dig into it. So why did I create this model? So this is a little bit about my backstory. So I left the corporate, the security of corporate Canada, the corporate world, to actually become an entrepreneur. I ended up being a business consultant, and I was helping grow companies. So from 2004 to 2009, I helped grow a company in Nisku, Alberta, which is just outside of Edmonton. I helped them grow from 1.5 million to 7 million through processes, procedures, technology, putting the right people in the right positions, strategies, growth, So that's where I spent the time after I left the corporate world. And I love to travel, but as anyone who is a consultant knows, or anyone who is an entrepreneur knows, that if I'm not actually billing for my hours, I don't get paid. I didn't really like that because I like to travel, but I didn't like coming back to not having any money. So I need to find a way that I was going to make money while I was traveling, and I was doing some research. And I thought, well, this real estate looks pretty good. And I ended up buying some of the Rich Dad books, and I actually took them with me on a trip, some of them on a trip to Europe at the time. And during that Europe trip, I was January, February of 2009. My friend messaged me, said, hey, there's going to be a Rich Dad, Poor Dad 2-hour session in Edmonton, where I live, just after you're back. Do you want me to register you? And I said, yeah, sure. So, you know, you go to the 2-hour event, you go to the 3-day weekend for $500. And the next thing you know, you're investing $40,000 into 8 courses and a mentor, which I kind of knew I was going to do, but didn't know I was going to do at the same time. I knew that was the path I was going to take. And I knew that this could fast track my learning. But what I didn't know, that I'd taken there's 3 courses I took between March and June. But what I didn't realize is, you know, I knew that we were in a financial crisis, and the company I was consulting at the time, we were starting to lose business. It was an oil field company that did work for oil field companies. So on June 29th, I was given my 1-day notice that my contract would be over the next day. So here I was, you know, $40,000 in credit card debt, had enough money in my bank to last 3 months. So on July 1st, I decided to get into real estate investing. I had no cash. I only had enough money to last 3 months. I had no credit. Basically, I'm unemployed. Hadn't had an actual job in, you know, what the bank deems as an actual job, because I worked for myself for, you know, 5 or 6 years. I didn't have access to any people with money, but I had taken a lease option class in June of just before I was let go. So I learned how I could help homeowners make money, help homeowners make more money on their property, while at the same time I get to use their property as an investment and make money all the way through. So I thought that, okay, great. That's the strategy I'm going to use. Like I said, it's a true no money down strategy. I didn't need anybody else. But then I had to get the property. So as an introvert, there's no way, because they teach you how to cold call. There's like no way I'm cold calling anybody. I tried to cold knock, walk up to somebody's house at for sale by owner. I started getting very anxious before I got to the stairs. I started, you know, sweating a little bit. It's like, and I just turned around and left. And I told my friend, I can't do this. I got to find a better way to get homeowners to talk to me. So fortunately, I had spent some time learning a little bit about marketing, and I knew about some things about websites and how to attract attention. So I created an ad that I still use to this day that was getting me 1 to 5 inquiries, 1 to 5 homeowners every day. As soon as I posted that ad on an online classified site, in Canada, it's known as Kijiji, but it's the same thing as Craigslist for people that are outside of Canada. So as soon as I posted it on that back in 2009, my phone started ringing, and I was starting to get emails. Homeowners had a problem. They were looking for a solution. Remember, 2009, we were still in a recession. Home prices had dropped considerably. There was a lot of people with properties and not having jobs, or, you know, they just couldn't afford their homes anymore. So everybody was looking for a solution. You know, they tried putting it up for sale. The problem is the banks tightened up their lending practices, and there wasn't a lot of people that could traditionally buy a house. So does all of this sound familiar? It kind of sounds like what we're going through right now. Which is the reason why I decided to write the book when I did, and start doing this, going through this training, because I think that what we're going through right now is very reminiscent of what was happening when I first started in real estate. And I know how great it was for the first, 3 to 4 years of me doing this business. It was gravy. So so July 1st of 2009, I got started. Within 30 days, I had my first house. Like I said, I met with a lot of homeowners. It's getting calls and emails every single day. I managed to fumble my way through a presentation to get a homeowner to say yes. They had a side-by-side duplex under one title. It was only one title, but it was a side-by-side duplex. They just didn't finish the process of splitting the title. And they had purchased a property or bought a property outside of the city, and they tried to sell it, but it wouldn't sell. And they didn't want to be long-distance landlords, so they put their home in the program. So within 60 days of losing my job, I put together my first rent-to-own deal. I made $5,000 on September 1st, and then I had a cash flow of $600 a month for that property for the next 3 years. So I continued to do one property a month for the next 24 months in a row, getting between $5,000 and $10,000 for a down payment, and cash flow typically between $200 and $500 a month per property. And during all this time, I spent years refining my system. I was controlling. At the peak, I had $200 million in real estate. I was making a 6-figure income without owning any of these properties. I did it all by lease optioning these properties. Ended up writing 2 Amazon #1 best-selling books, Rent-to-Own Revolution and Infinite Real Estate ROI. And I created the Rent-to-Own Revolution training program, as well as the OPH method, which we're going to go through today. So I'm also helping people like you. So this strategy works no matter what type of property you want to control or the exit strategy that you're going to focus on. Because there's really 2 components. There's getting control of the property, and then once you have control, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to make your money? Okay, so there's 2 distinct components. So it doesn't matter what your exit strategy is. You need to get control, and then you determine, okay, well, how am I going to make the most amount of money I can out of this property that I now have control over? So the strategy also makes it possible to get properties that no one else knows are available through the marketing, because you're attracting a lot of homeowners who have not reached out to other people for help yet, or because you're not putting any cash down, you're less worried about your return on investment, because it's pretty much an infinite return on investment when you put no cash down. There's not your cash, not anybody else's cash. Because even if you're using somebody else's cash to buy a property, you have to be concerned with the return on investment, because you have to make sure that your investors are getting compensated for using their money. But when you're not using anybody's money, you don't have to worry as much about the return on investment, as long as the deal is going to make you money. Because remember, you're doing it virtually with no money. In all my cases, I give the homeowner $100. You have to give them something to make the contracts legal. You can give them $1, but who's going to write a check for $1? So I just made it policy to give them $100. So, but I get that $100 back, almost instantaneously as soon as I do the deal. So in essence, I have no money in the deal. So my return is actually infinite. So anyone can do this. Like I said, you don't need to have a lot of cash or credit or partners or ability to raise money at all. So here's just a quick example of one of the properties I made up making $50,000 on this one property. So the lady's name was Bola. Her husband was a doctor, and he had been relocated to Saskatchewan, which is the next province over from me. And they had their house up for sale for 4 months, and they didn't really have any offers. And at this point in time, nobody was even coming to view the place. So they had already moved out, relocated to Saskatchewan, and she did not want to be a long distance landlord. So she saw my ad, she called me up, and we ended up putting a deal together. I gave her $100 to make the contracts valid. And then I agreed to rent her house for $1,700 a month. And I was going to buy it at the end of the 3 years for $412,800. Okay. So then I decided I was going to turn that into a rent to own and try to find somebody who just needed some time to qualify. So I found a lovely couple, young couple, Dana and Corey. They were self-employed. They worked in the construction trade. They did siding on people's houses, but because they were self-employed, the way that they reported their income to the government and for tax purposes showed that they did not make enough money when actually they did. Obviously, anyone that's an entrepreneur knows that you're going to reduce your taxable income as much as possible just to pay less tax. However, the banks don't like to see that. So the mortgage broker and the credit coach had a talk with them and talked to their accountant, says here's how much they have to report on their taxes for the next 3 years to be able to qualify. So they restructured the way that they reported their income or their expenses to show that they made more money so that they'd be able to qualify for the property. So they gave me initial $5,000 down to get in. They agreed to pay $2,200 a month. Of that, I gave them a credit of $775 towards their down payment. And they were going to buy the place at the end of 3 years for $469,000, less the down payment that they've accumulated. So it ended up being a 3.5-year term. So my income out of this deal, on day one, I made $5,000. Every single month, I made $500. So I was getting $2,200 from them, and I was paying the owner $1,700. So every single month, I had a $500 a month cash flow, and I did that for 42 months. So that made it $21,000 on this property, and it closed at the end. They were buying it from me for $469, less the down payment that they've already accumulated, and I was buying it from the owner at $412. So after we adjusted for the option credits that they'd already been given, basically their down payment and any legal fees and all of that, I ended up profiting $23,300 out of that. So all told, in that one property, I ended up making $50,000 over the 3.5 years. Okay, so this would be a typical for me. This was a typical amount of money that I'd make on a property. Now we don't do anything for. It's very rare that we accept as little as $5,000 down. Typically, it's $7,500 or $10,000 down now, and the average cash flow is anywhere from $300 to $500 a month now. So in this one, I did invest $100. So technically, and I made a profit of $49,300, which is a 16,400% return on my $100 investment. However, as soon as they gave me that $5,000, my investment was paid back. So in actuality, it was an infinite return. I didn't have any money invested. So whichever way you look at it, I made a lot of money for basically nothing, for very little money. Okay. So that leads me to the strategy that enables you to do this, which is called a lease option. And there's something also called a sandwich lease option, which is what I typically use. So we're going to talk a little bit today about both of those. And tomorrow, when we're doing setup and structure, we'll get deeper into how I put it together and structure it, and the agreements that I would use to go into more detail. So, but today we're just going to go through is like, what is a lease option and what is a sandwich lease option, and sort of how does that look? Okay. So lease option, sandwich lease option. Okay, it starts with you, obviously. You're the investor. And you have this homeowner. So this homeowner's contacted you. You're in negotiations with them. And what you're looking to do is you want to lease that homeowner's property, and you want to have the option to buy it. Now, option in my consideration is, in my point of view, is probably one of the most, it's the most powerful contract in real estate, because it's just like it says, it's an option. You know, maybe I'll do this, or maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll buy the property, or maybe I won't buy the property. The option is mine. So you, as the person that's entering into the agreement with the owner, you have the option. Maybe you'll buy it, maybe you won't. So at the end of the term, you're not obligated to buy the property if you don't want to, or if you just can't find somebody to take it off your hands. Whatever the case, you've limited your liability, where technically you don't have to execute the purchase of the property. Unlike agreement for sale or subject tos, things like that, where you have to purchase the property at the end. Otherwise, you could risk being sued by the owner. So here, there's, so you go into the owner, you want to lease it, just like a typical tenant, right? A tenant landlord situation. The owner's the landlord, you're the tenant. You lease the property for whatever, $1,500 a month. The option says, hey, within 3 years, I'm going to buy this property at this price. Let's just say $300,000. So in 3 years, I'm going to buy the property at $300,000. So the option basically breaks down the price and the terms of the arrangement of you buying the property. So there's things thrown in there like that, that me, as the you person in this situation, I'll be responsible for the repairs and maintenance of the property up to a certain dollar value, and things like that. So the option itself has all the price and the terms of the purchase agreement and what you agree to do during the term of the option. So the option has a term. Typically, in my case, I always go for a 3-year term, but there's always a term in there. Sorry, there was just a message. Malik says, Malik says, I want to learn lease options so I can do short-term rentals. This is perfect for doing that, Malik. If you want to do Airbnb or executive rentals, things like that, this is ideal. You don't have to purchase the property, and we'll actually get into that. I don't do an example of a short-term rental, but we are going to go through some examples today. Some financial examples, because remember, there's two components. There's the component of you have to get the property from the homeowner, and then your exit strategy. So the exit strategy Malik is talking about is he wants to do short-term rentals. So whether they be Airbnb or executive rentals, whatever, typically it's something for a much higher price point than your average monthly rental. So, but that is what you decide to do. So the exit strategy is completely up to you, what you want to do. And then you don't, in this case, Malik, at the end of the term with the owner, you wouldn't actually have to, if you didn't want to buy the property, you don't have to. You have the option to say, hey, okay, I'll give the property back to the owner in the same condition I accepted it in. So, or you may get it at a good price, and then by the end, you've bought yourself 3 years to say, okay, hey, I got 3 years. I'm going to find an investor. I'm going to do this short-term rental thing on this property that goes really well, and I'm making good money. Maybe I can find an investor during the 3 years that will buy the property at the end of the term from the owner, and then I can just keep doing this, or I sell it as a complete investment package to the investors. Like, hey, this is it's a short-term rental scenario. It's up and running. Here's sort of the money that it's making. So you want to buy the whole deal, like the property and the investment or the investment strategy that I've already created for you, and just wholesale that and sell the property. So things like that. So there's two, like I said, there's two components here. Right now, this first component is you need to control the property, okay? So that's through a lease and an option. And that is called a lease option strategy. So there's the lease option strategy right there. So there's you and there's the owner. You structure a lease and then you have an option contract, and the option is just the ability to purchase the home in the future based on the price and terms set out in the option agreement. Now, once you have those two contracts, you register them on title, register the option on title as a caveat. Then you have full control of the property. The owner cannot rent it to anybody else. They cannot sell it out from under you. They cannot refinance the property. There's nothing the owner can do once you have it under lease option. They've relinquished all control of the property during that term. So in essence, even though the title is not in your name, in essence, you are the owner that controls that property now, but you just don't have title and you're not responsible for, obviously, the financing. Because the owner still has to pay the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the homeowners association, the condo fees, if there are any. Those major things the homeowner pays, you just pay them rent every month, whatever that rent price is that you negotiate, okay? So this is a lease option. Now on the other side, maybe you have it, you're going to structure a rent to own, and you have a tenant or a homeowner in training. That's what HOIT stands for, homeowner in training. So this is an exit. This is just one exit strategy, because now that you have the property, you can decide what you want to do. Malik wants to do short-term executive rentals or Airbnb. So he would just be doing a straight lease or putting it up on Airbnb and having that arrangement. So that's all he would need to do. He wouldn't have to do anything else. In this situation, where we're going to do we're going to turn this property into a rent to own, how would you go about doing that? So first we get the homeowner in training, and then we need to sublease it to them, because in our lease with the owner, it says that we have the ability to sublease it to somebody else. So we're not going to be the ones living in it. We have that control of subleasing it. So we would give a sublease to a tenant, or in Malik's situation, they would sublease it to the executive tenant or the Airbnb tenant. They have that ability to sublease it. And in the rent-own, we're turning it into rent-own, we give the tenant an option to purchase it. So they have the ability to buy it in the future, okay? So just like we have the ability to buy it from the owner, we give them the ability to buy it from us. And that single scenario between myself and the tenant is also called a lease option. But when you put the whole thing together like this is what's called a sandwich lease option. Like you're the meat in the middle, right? This is a sandwich, you're the meat in the middle, and you know what they say about a middleman? The middleman makes all the money. So in this situation, you're the one making all the money, okay? Middle person, I guess. Not middleman, middle person. Are you allowed, Galaxy A5? Hey, Galaxy A5, can you just tell me what your name, like just type in your name so I don't call you Galaxy A5. Galaxy A5 wants to know if you're allowed to fix up the house during the lease or raise the rents. So we're going to get into that situation. I'm going to show you examples today where we're purposely going in there and doing it's a fixer-upper. It's instead of a buy, fix, and sell, we do a lease option, fix, and sell. So yes, you have the ability to do fix up the property, and you can even raise. It's Florence. Thank you, Florence. You can even raise the rents. Now it depends on your exit strategy. When I turn mine into a rent own, I don't raise the rents during the 3 years. I just keep it consistent. But it's completely up to you. It's whatever the Landlord and Tenant Act is for your province or state. You have the ability to do whatever you want to within, obviously, their guidelines. So in where I live, we can raise our rents as much as we want. You know, there's no rent restrictions or anything like that when it comes to raising rents. So yes, you have the ability to raise rents. Yes, you have the ability to fix up the house, and a lot of this is a lot of these things. Well, in the lease is governed by the Landlord and Tenant Act, so that it doesn't matter what's in the lease. You have that ability to do it based on your province or state, wherever you live, whatever their guidelines are. Doesn't matter what's in the lease. The fixing up part, that can be built right into your option contract, where you have that ability to do that. Okay. Hopefully that answered your question. So this is the lease option and the sandwich lease option. Like I said, there's two separate lease options that make up the sandwich lease option. Remember, we're concerned with two things: lease option to get the property, exit strategy. So whatever exit strategy you want, but we need to get the property first and get it under control and have full ownership of it, in quotation marks. And we do that through the lease option strategy. Okay, so types of properties that you can lease option or sandwich lease option. You can do this with a condo, townhouse, row house, duplex, single family home. You can do this with even an apartment building. You can lease option apartment buildings from the owner. You can lease option commercial buildings from the owner. And you can do this with land. This is actually how a lot of developers grab large chunks of land, and then they would have an option to buy all of the land, but then they would have it broken down into say they have an option to buy 100 acres, and then every 10 acres they execute every 10 acres and purchase 10 acres at a time, based on raising investment capital. Obviously, once they raise the investment capital to do all the stuff on the land, like building the roads and putting in the sewers and all of that, they would do that, and then they would raise more investment capital to do the next 10 acres, and they would just be purchasing it from the owner, 10 acres at a time, but they have the option to buy all 100 acres. So that's typically how developers use it to take over land. Types of homeowners willing to lease option. So a homeowner that's looking to sell their home. I've got a lot of homeowners that had their home up for sale, wasn't selling for whatever reason, and they came to me and said, hey, because they had to do something with it. So they decided they were going to rent it out for 2 to 3 years and then sell it. And they would rather work with me instead of being a landlord and then going through the process again of putting it up for sale. So maybe it's a landlord or homeowner that's just tired of dealing with tenants, and they don't want to deal with tenants anymore, and they just want some company to come in and look after it for them and be the tenant. So you get a lot of those. Someone who's upside down in their mortgage. There was a lot of that when I first got started. Home prices had dropped, and there was a lot of homeowners who owed more than their price was worth. And the only thing that fixes that is time. So they said, well, I could rent it out and then in the future buy it, giving time for two things to happen. One, the mortgage to get paid down. And the second thing, for the price to eventually come back up for the home. So when they sell the place in the future, they're not going to have to pay out of pocket to close on the deal, which they would have to if they sold it right now. They'd have to come up with the cash, the shortfall between what the purchaser was paying and what was owed on the mortgage. Someone going into foreclosure, so this is before the bank actually takes title. I've done this several times. Homeowners have contacted me. They're facing foreclosure. They've just after the bank had sent the notice, after they missed 3 payments, or they just received in Canada, they receive a document from the court that starts the legal action. It's called a statement of claim here. So they would receive that, then they'd start freaking out and say, how do I stop this foreclosure? And really the only way to stop a foreclosure is you have to pay out the arrears. You have to pay the cash to the bank to catch up all the arrears and then proceed to keep making regular payments. So I tell the homeowners that, and I said, if you want me to, I can do that for you, but you have to leave this house. Like I'm not going to do it and you stay in it. You have to leave. Go live somewhere else. I will take over your house. I will pay out the arrears. I will lease option it, buy it in the future. You get to keep your credit. I'll give you some cash to go rent a place, your first month's rent, get you set up there. So that's how I end up taking over properties that are going into foreclosure. Person who doesn't like managing properties, like I said, landlords are just tired of dealing with stuff. And where I get most of my properties is a person who's actually over leveraged their property. So a lot of these people have bought with only 5% down and they own the property for, say, less than 5 or 7 years. So the price of the home, there hasn't been much appreciation during that term. And the mortgage hasn't been paid down that much. So in Canada, where I live, you can buy a house with 5% down and there's a mortgage insurance that gets added on. Now, I believe in the US, the mortgage insurance, you pay a separate fee every single month to have the mortgage insurance, just like you would house insurance or car insurance. But in Canada, they take the value of the mortgage insurance. So let's say it's a $300,000 house and it's a percentage of the mortgage. And let's say it's like 4% of the mortgage of the total value. They would add that on top of the mortgage. So now all of a sudden your 5% that you put down, they take that amount and they tack it on top of your mortgage. So at the end of the day, you're almost 100% financed. So people when they go to sell their home, in less than 5 or 7 years, because the way the mortgage insurance works and they tack it on top of the mortgage value, so it's built right into your mortgage payment, but they tack that amount. So instead of borrowing 300, all of a sudden you're borrowing 310 because they tack that mortgage insurance of 10,000 on top of the mortgage value, and you have to pay it out through the mortgage. But when you go to sell your house, now you have to not only pay out the actual mortgage, but you have to pay out the insurance that you're not going to use, that you're not using anyway, because you're selling the property, but they don't care. They want you to pay out the full amount. So a lot of people get themselves in a position where they just can't afford to sell their house. If they sell their house, after even with negotiations, paying out a realtor, they're going to end up with not even recovering their down payment money. I'll give you a very specific example. I bought my first house in Edmonton when back in the early 2000s when I was still in the corporate world. I ended up paying like 140,000 back when you could get a decent house for in the 100,000s in Edmonton. Not so much anymore. That same house is worth like 300 and something today, but 140,000. And then I only owned it. I bought it for 5% down. Then they tacked the mortgage insurance on it, so I was almost 100% financed. Then in 3 years, I decided, I'm going to leave the corporate world. I'm going to, I'm taking a different life direction. At that time, I was thinking I was actually going to leave the city, so I needed to sell my property. So I put it up for sale, and then after some negotiations with the potential owner, like it took months, but then I got an offer after negotiations, after paying out the realtor, and after paying out the lawyers. I got a check from the lawyer when it was all said and done for under $3,000, so like $2,000 and something. I can't remember the exact amount. Only $2,000 something. My down payment on the place was like $8,000 or so. So I paid $8,000 down, which was 5%. There should have been mortgage pay down for 3 years. So that would have been something. Let's just say, even if it was $1,000 a month or a year. So that, it should have been 10, 12,000 that I should have had in equity or whatever. But through negotiations and mortgage and having that mortgage insurance tacked on and realtor fees, I basically just sold that house and I got less like $2,000. Like, so that's the same situation most homeowners are in today that buy their place with 5% down and sell in less than 7 years maybe. Same situation. They're not even going to recover their down payment. So versus if they work with me, I show them how they're going to recapture all their down payment plus make even more money. They're more apt to want to actually put their home in your program. And we'll spend most of our time dealing with owners. So these are the owners that I spend most of my time dealing with. All right, so what are the benefits to an owner? Like, why would they want to do this? So a lot of properties, they could take forever to sell. Depends on the market, the situation. Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? If it's a buyer's market, obviously there's a lot of properties for sale and not enough buyers. And these homeowners, it might be a financial drain on them. So you're an option that you can help them, stop the bleeding or, get out of this situation. So if the owner is relocating, like my example, Bola and her doctor husband, they are relocating and it didn't sell, and they don't want to pay two mortgages or be long distance landlords, perfect for them. They're going to make more money than renting. So if they were just to turn it into a rental, they're going to make more money, even though you're getting at a cheaper monthly price, because they don't have to deal with all the repairs and maintenance and the vacancy issues and all of that stuff, which we're going to get into tomorrow when we go through the negotiation. We'll go through how the homeowner, you can rent the house from the homeowner for $200 to $300 less than they can get on the fair market, but they end up actually getting more because they don't have to worry about all these things that keep coming up, like repairs and maintenance, vacancies, dealing with bad tenants, all of that stuff. We set it at a predetermined price. So basically we're going to buy it in the future at said price. So that's negotiated today. So we can actually, they can actually plan for stuff. There's no real estate fees or commissions. So we don't charge them commissions or any fees when the property is sold. They don't have to worry about the ongoing maintenance. Typically in these scenarios, with all of my clients, my company is responsible for all the repairs and maintenance up to $1,000 per instance, which I pass on to my tenants, which is a difference between executive rental and I typically turn mine into a rent to own because I do not want to be responsible for any repairs and maintenance that come up. So that $1,000, I guarantee the homeowner that I'm going to look after, I pass that on to the people living in it, which is easy to do in the when you turn it into a rent to own. But if you're doing executive rentals and Airbnb, obviously there's that risk factor, right? Are you going to be able to, are people going in? If you're doing executive rentals, there's a really good chance that people aren't going to trash the place because they're paying a lot of money for it. Airbnb, it's hit and miss whether you get some crazy kids in there that just destroy the place or not. So obviously the screening of the individuals is key. Reduce management. So if they're working with you, obviously they don't have to pay property management fees to have it managed, like that comes off the rent every single month. And they don't have to worry about late payments or vacancies because they typically, when they're renting it to me, I have a couple of different programs, but one of my programs is my company guarantees the rent, whether I get paid or not. Okay. And then so if I have a 36-month term, then their rent is guaranteed for 36 months. So there's no vacancies. Okay. So who can do this? So who can do lease options? Like I said, sandwich lease option is truly the only no money down real estate strategy where you don't need anybody's money to do any of this. You don't need yours. You don't need anybody else's. It's usually always, like I said, it's usually always somebody's money when it comes to real estate investing. But this strategy, you don't need any of that. So it doesn't matter. As an investor, you can even be bankrupt. It doesn't matter. You can be here, have just gone through a bankruptcy or even going through a bankruptcy. Does not matter. You can still do this. You can be facing foreclosure yourself. Doesn't matter. You can still do this. Maybe you don't have any money in your bank account. Doesn't matter. You can still do this. Well, you need $100, but you can still do this. Doesn't really matter. Like I said, if you don't have any money. So what do you need to do this? Well, you need knowledge. Hence why you're here. You need time. You need time to actually go out and do this. Now, here's something that I know to be true. People will always find the time and money to do the things that they really want to do if they think it's important to you. So if you think this is important to you, to get your financial freedom, to build a real estate portfolio, to do this strategy, you're going to find the time and the money to make it happen. So like I said, all of you found the time to be here today. Congratulations. You may have given up a lot of other things that are important to you just to be here this weekend to learn this strategy. So all of you thought it was more important to be here than to do all of those other things that you could have been doing on the weekend. And really in today's world, and a lot of you see this, especially what's going on in the world today, there's no such thing as a good, secure job. What is there? There's like good, secure people. That's it. So people that have the ability to look after themselves. So that old saying of go to school, get a good job, get a good education, get a good job, that doesn't matter these days with, hence what's going on in the world. You could have a great job, but a pandemic hits and you could be not working and still not working today. So I don't think getting a good education and getting a good job is as secure as it was back in the, before the 2000s. So, and with a lot of these companies, like it's cheaper for them to go broke, wipe out the pensions, and then start up again in some other corporate entity name than to pay out the pensions or to deal with a lot of stuff. So, and right now there's so many businesses that are just closing down permanently. There's a lot of uncertainty out there right now. So hopefully like a lot of you'd rather be in control of your own destiny than to leave it up to other companies or the government. So, the government's broker than you are. So who you want to rely on? Somebody that's broker than you are, or rely on yourself? I think I'll pick myself. So it doesn't matter how bad of a shape you're in the right place at the right time. Like I said, you're going to learn how to do this for yourself. All right, so the opportunity. So how big is the market? So how big of a market do we have for lease optioning people's houses? Well, if you just think about in your area and think about the marketing that you see, what do you actually see anybody out there marketing for rent-owns or to rent-own people's places? I would hazard a guess that it's less than 1% of all homes in your community or in your city are actually lease option, way less than 1%. There's very few people that do this business, very few that do it and do it successfully. Compared to all the realtors and brokers in your current city, if you think about just in your city, how many different real estate brokerages are there? And then how many realtors are in each brokerage? And think about the number of houses. So there's a lot of people out there competing to try to get the houses to sell them today. But there's very few people out there competing to rent somebody's house for 2 to 3 years and then buy it in the future. So there's not a lot of competition. And somebody, one of the gentlemen that's on the on the call is actually in my city. And he said, well, if I want to do this, like, you're here. Like, I got to compete against you. And I was like, well, there's really nobody else doing it. It's just me that I can see. I know there's a few investors out there doing some, but you don't see a lot of activity, a lot of marketing. I said, Edmonton is over 1 million people. So you figure there's got to be at least 300,000 homes. There's always 8,000 properties on the MLS on any given month. So there's lots of opportunities. So it doesn't matter that I'm currently doing in the city. You can be doing in the city. 10 other people could be doing it in this city. The more people doing it in the city, the more exposure the business has or the strategy has, the more mainstream it becomes. But if you just think about the number of realtors and brokers doing it in your city, selling houses, and then how many people do you actually see out there looking to lease option properties or talking about rent to own? I typically don't even use the words rent to own when I talk to homeowners. I just always, I want to lease their property and have it and lease the property and want to buy it in the future. That's all I say. Never use those words rent to own when I talk to a homeowner. I use them when I talk to a tenant, but never a homeowner. I'm always wanting to lease it and have the option to buy it in the future. So what I'm saying is there's lots of opportunity in every single market that you're in. Like I said, every single house out there that's either for sale or for rent right now is a potential opportunity. So where does this lease option work? Well, this works anywhere that you can sell and rent properties. It doesn't matter if the market's going up or down or if it's stagnant. It doesn't matter. It works in all situations because here's the thing. People get themselves in problems in all of these situations, whether it's an up market, down market, buyer's market, seller's market, flat. People are in situations where they just can't sell their home today, or they need to do something else. They just, for whatever reason, they can't sell today. So even if it's a buyer's or a seller's market, there's times when homeowners just can't sell their home. So they still need somebody to come in and help them out. Like I said, the strategy works in all markets. Any fool, as you know, any fool can make money in an up market. Like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to make a lot of money when the market keeps going up. So when does it work? Well, the lease option or sandwich lease option, it really solves a lot of problems that homeowners have. When it's a down market, such as we're going to be faced with very soon, I know that I've seen a lot of reports in my country for Canada, a lot of predictions, and they do not look good for the housing market for next year. They do not look good at all, which makes me smile in some ways, because that means that there's going to be a ton of opportunities in Canada, and based on what all the economists and bank financial advisors and the people from the mortgage insurance companies are saying about what's going to happen in the market. And it's not going to be good. And with the job situation, a lot of people still unemployed, there's going to be a lot of properties. This is going to be reminiscent of, like I said, 2009 to 2012 in my country. And I believe it's going to be similar in a lot of other countries too, because a lot of depends on, in the U.S. depends on what state you're in, whether they're open or still shut down. So a lot of states that are shut down, people are like, a lot of them aren't getting the support from the government, or I don't know how they're making their mortgage payments, but there's going to be a lot of opportunity. So also real estate is cyclical. Every 10 to 15 years, it goes up and down. This seems to be, 10, 12 years since the last down? Yeah, 12 years or so since the last time it went down. So it's due to go down again. And then it'll go, after it goes down for a year or two, it'll go back up. So it's on the down cycles where this strategy, you make a lot more money because there's a lot more people with problems. The harder it gets for people out there, the better it is for you. Like I said, job losses, down market, declining home prices, all of that works into your favor. So what kinds of homeowners to look for? Like I said, owners with problems, owners with management hassles, owners who live in another town or city, like the example of Bola, owners with where the last tenant caused a lot of damage on their property, owners with vacant properties. Megan and Leaf, they were the first couple, the first home I took over in 2009. They were the owners of that first couple, that side-by-side duplex I talked about, where I made however much money, I can't remember, $5,000 down on the first day and then $600 cash flow for 3 years. The person that actually lease optioned that from me did everything he was supposed to, had the down payment built up with me, fixed their credit so they could buy it. So they were in a position to buy it at the end of the term. They just ended up walking away. They said no, they didn't want it anymore. They were just going to go buy somewhere else. I said, okay. And they just walked away from their money. But anyway, so owners going into pre-foreclosure. So there's one home in particular that stands out. The homeowner's name was Ron. Nice, newer home. It was built in 2007. I ended up taking it over in 2010 or 2011. So it was fairly new. It was 2,300 square feet, 2-story. It was a nice place, nice area of Edmonton. And he just got himself into foreclosure problems. So, he signed the lease option with me to, I paid out all the arrears. It cost me $17,000 to pay out the arrears. And I was leasing the property. And I was trying to rent to own it. But at that point in time, I just wasn't finding a tenant buyer quick enough. So I just decided to put a tenant in there that was covering my monthly payment. And then after a couple of years, they moved out. And then after they moved out, repainted the entire place, changed out the carpet so it was all nice and new, and ended up turning it into a rent-own. And the guy came in with $10,000 down. I was making $650 cash flow on that one. And then he ended up losing his job contract, and he had to leave. And so during that time that he was in there, the mortgage came due. And when the mortgage came due, I went back to Ron. I said, hey, Ron, this property, it's hasn't gone up enough. The mortgage hasn't been paid down enough. I need you to come to the bank with me and just sign the mortgage documents to do another term on the mortgage. We'll do a 4-year term. So he did. The owner, he was so happy with me because I saved him from foreclosure, and he didn't have any hassles with the home. He never had to worry about anything. He was not expecting to get any money. I was buying the property for just what's left out on the mortgage anyway. So he was happy he went to the bank with me, and he signed the mortgage documents to extend the term of the mortgage for another 4 years, and much better interest rate, dropped the payment by about $300 a month. Which was great. And I was going to end up buying it for in the future. The mortgage ended up getting paid down during that term, that the time that I had it over 7 or 9 years, it was ended up getting paid down like 50-some grand. So yeah, and then that ended up being one of the ones I lost to a partner. So whatever. But that was a great situation. Owners with huge payout penalties to pay the mortgage before the end of the term. Now, this was happening in Canada a lot after the financial collapse. I don't know if this was happening in other places in the world. When you pay out your mortgage before the term is up, so if you have a 5-year term, let's say you sell your place after 2 years, so you got 3 years left on the mortgage. Typically, you'd end up paying a 3-month penalty. So 3 months worth of payment would be your penalty. Now, because during that financial collapse, they dropped the interest rates considerably. So everybody that had mortgages were had them at 5 or 6% interest rate, and because of the collapse, now mortgages were at 2 or 3% interest rate. So the bank was going to lose out on that 2 or 3% interest if you sold your property and then somebody else bought it and got a new mortgage, because they were going from getting 5% interest down to 2% interest with the new buyer. So the bank decided, well, we don't like that, so we're going to charge you a penalty of not 3 months, but we're going to charge you interest differential. So you have to pay the difference of the 2 or 3% interest on the balance of that time frame. So if there was 3 years left on the term, you'd have to pay the interest, 2 or 3% interest on the mortgage for that 3 years. And a lot of people, it ended up being, on a condo that was less than $200,000, they'd have a $30,000 payout penalty, which they just couldn't do because the condo wasn't worth what they were selling it for to begin with. So it put a lot of people in bad situations. So I don't know if any other country was doing that at that particular time, but I know Canada was, and they were screwing over a lot of homeowners hard. So owners can have some huge payout penalties. So those individuals, it's perfect because you lease option it and have the purchase come due at the same time that the term of the mortgage comes due. So owners who can't afford to sell, or their mortgage is more than fair market value of the home, like I said, that's most of my clients. People that bought with 5% down, owned it for less than 7 years. Those are a lot of my clients. And owners who just can't sell their houses, owners who list their homes for rent. Those are the types of people that you want to go after. So what kinds of homeowners look for? You can be looking in the classifieds, whether it be in the newspaper. I don't even know if they have newspaper classifieds anymore, but on the internet, classifieds for your local area for houses for rent. And you want to look for specific keywords in those classifieds. When they say it's vacant, that means that typically means the homeowner's bleeding money, so they're more apt to want to do something. If they say it's going to be vacant at a future date, well, there is a chance that they're kicking a lousy tenant out. There is that possibility, or it's just the tenant decided that they're going to move on. But there's a chance that they're kicking a lousy tenant out, so that could be a good opportunity for that property if the homeowner might be tired of dealing with those types of tenants. Newly renovated, well, that could mean that the last tenant destroyed the place and they just ended up sinking a lot of money into it to fix it up, and they don't want to go through that again. So they'd be more than happy to work with somebody like you, who your company is going to rent it and then have the option to buy it, and you're going to look after all the repairs and maintenance and be responsible for the property. They're more apt to work with somebody like you than put another tenant in there. Mature couple or family preferred, if that's the terminology they're using, then these homeowners or landlords are tired of the transient people or the young people who are moving in and out and only staying for a short period of time. Maybe they're doing the midnight moves, so they want people that are going to be more settled and stay longer. So so if you see that terminology, it could be a frustrated homeowner. Like I said, you can look for the classifieds online for houses for sale. Like I said, it could be somebody's second home. They purchased a new one, can't sell this one, or they relocated, can't sell. Maybe it's an investment property that they're trying to unload. Maybe they have issues with management issues or time issues. They just don't have the time to manage it. Maybe they're retiring or they're moving out of the home. Okay.